Hi, all of you awesome scuba divers out there. Welcome to the Scuba Diving Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and just underwater things that have piqued my interest over the previous week. This week on the podcast, a US marine robotics company believes it's found the remains of Amelia Earhart's long-lost aeroplane 5 kilometers deep in the Pacific, which is pretty cool. British divers use their skills and emergency equipment to save an old lady, and there's also a new alternative to Valentine's Day flowers that can help save coral reefs. So yeah, the big news this week was that a team from a US marine robotics company called Deep Sea Vision have found what they believe to be the wreck of the missing Lockheed 10E Electra aircraft, which was flown by Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan, who took off from Lae in New Guinea on the 2nd of July 1937, with only 7,000 miles left to go to complete a record-breaking flight around the world when their plane vanished. They've been scanning the bottom of the Pacific, and they used sonar, and it picked up this image of what admittedly looks a lot like the aircraft, although it's going to take like a 5-kilometer submersible dive into the Central Pacific to confirm their claim. So to put it into perspective, when they disappeared, they were heading for a 1 square mile Howland Island, which is just north of the equator, about halfway between Hawaii and Australia. So a lot of ocean out there, a lot of nothing. At the time, there was a US settlement on that coral island that they were heading for, and they just never turned up. And it's always been this big mystery. Deep Sea Vision CEO Tony Romero and his 16-strong team were working on the dateline theory of why the Electra disappeared. Advanced in 2010, the theory suggests that weary after 17 hours of flying, Noonan had simply forgotten to turn back the date from the 3rd to the 2nd of July as the aircraft crossed the international dateline. And this navigational error would have shifted the aircraft's likely position by 60 miles, so they weren't where they expected. Following up on this theory, Deep Sea Vision scanned more than 5,200 square miles of seabed from the research vessel the Offshore Surveyor using its modified Discovery Hugin 6000 AUV with synthetic aperture sonar scanning system to eventually obtain the images it believes is the missing aircraft. US aviation historian Steve Zuger commented that although the wings appear swept back, unlike those of the Electra, it is possible that they corroded and been pushed backwards by currents. Quote, "The twin rudders show vaguely in the picture. Very few aircraft from that time period had twin stab vertical stabilizer tails like the Electra, leading me to think this could be Earhart's." Also quoting, very few Electras around that time were reported in accidents in that part of the Pacific, let alone close to Howland. I've not heard what direction Amelia and Fred Noonan's possible aircraft is facing. If the nose is facing towards Hawaii, she didn't try to turn around but ditched with the nose pointing towards Howland Island. She was a competent aviatrix, which is, I've never heard that term before, but it's pretty cool, and probably try to gently set the Lockheed down on the water. Earhart did not have a raft with her because she left it at one of her stops to save weight, unfortunate, so she knew the importance of trying not to wad her aircraft up on landing. She, after all, needed her Electra to double as a life raft and stay afloat as long as possible. When the weight of the engines eventually pulled the Lockheed below the waves and it sank, ending up miles down in the cold, dark ocean, it could have been intact from the soft water landing. So it's pretty cool, and granted they are sonar images, so they're not perfect, but yeah, if you showed someone that shape and general scale, they'd say, yeah, that looks like an aeroplane, and it still does. So I imagine they're working on trying to get a submersible down there as soon as possible, or at least an ROV at least. Yeah, pretty cool. 5 kilometers is a bit deep for a wreck dive, but But yeah, it's nice to finally be able to put a nail in that, or just end that story, that they know, you know what, yeah, this is what we reckon happens. Navigator basically forgot to account for the change in the days, so they were off on their navigation, and yeah, they missed the island. But yeah, this is where the final resting place likely is. Here in the UK, a pair of scuba divers from Hemel Hempstead used their oxygen cylinders to assist a fallen woman en route to a dive. Andrew Loud and Matthew Harland had been travelling to Gildenburg Water when they were called into action to help a woman believed to be in her 80s who had been taken ill. The pair of divers were able to provide vital first aid to a pensioner who had fallen ill in a store using the kit that they normally need underwater. This is coming from the Hemel Today, brought to you by the Gazette. So I don't think they understand what an emergency oxygen tank is for. Andrew and Matthew had driven to Whittlesea from Hemel Hempstead to dive at Gildy, but stopped on their way for a drink. Whilst at the co-op on Thursday morning, the 26th of January, their trip took an unexpected turn, and the pair had to use their diving kits to come to the aid of a woman who needed medical help. Andrew said, quote, "We went to the co-op round the corner to pick up some water. When we got there was an elderly lady sitting in a chair, and people were saying that she had taken ill. We saw her, and she was going a purple colour, which is a sign of oxygen starvation. She was very frail, and you could see her condition was deteriorating. The staff were doing a good job at being sympathetic, but she was going downhill quite rapidly. We are not medically trained, but we have done a bit more than the basic first aid training. We got someone to call 999, and we started talking to her, trying to keep her awake. We were told ambulance was going to be about half an hour, so we made the decision to go and get the oxygen tanks we have for diving. We gave her oxygen for about 10 minutes. Before that, she was really panicking, but the oxygen really settled her down. After a few minutes, she really perked up. She was telling us about her family. She wanted to go home, but we told her she should go with the ambulance. It could have been a lot worse. She was looking very frail when we arrived, and her condition was getting worse. We were definitely in the right place at the right time to help her." Andrew said that his training as a scuba diver had been vital. He said, quote, "I've been diving since 2001, and over the years you take a few courses and things. I've done a dive leader course with the British Sub-Aqua Club, or BSAC, and part of that was the Life Savers Award. I've used my diving skills a few times on land, and it all started to come together, and I was able to help someone." Now, Andrew and Matthew are trying to find out how the woman is doing following her instance. Andrew said she did not have any family locally, so we were not able to get any contact details for anyone. We would love to know how she is doing and if she is okay. So well done, guys. Yeah, I always have a first aid kit, more of a general one. I don't carry O2 in my car, just when I'm driving around. But yeah, general first aid's always in the back of my car, just in case. And yeah, the training does kind of take over. I mean, I was stood in a pharmacy when a lady collapsed, and like the first to go and help, because she like slumped up against a wall, so her chin was right down on her chest and she was struggling to breathe. And you kind of, yeah, your training takes over, and you look up and you realize that no one else is helping. So I think it's just kind of like in scuba divers like mindset in our training, especially if you do like rescue and anything above. Yeah, well done, guys. And yeah, it just goes to show how we're always there to help, and the training really does help. Now that we're in February, of course, we've got Valentine's Day, and as Valentine's Day encourages people around the world to splash out and share the love, the event has an unfortunate impact on the environment, according to Coral Gardeners. The Coral Restoration NGO says that during the month, some 570 tons of roses are imported into the United Kingdom alone, equating to a claimed carbon dioxide emission of 30 kilograms per bunch of flowers. So with its base now in the South Pacific archipelago and honeymoon destination of Fiji, Coral Gardeners is offering environmentally conscious lovers, including scuba divers, an alternative to gifting flowers in the form of a coral bouquet. Coral Gardeners collect and nurture fledgling corals and send a downloadable card, including a picture of the coral with a personal message from the sender to reach the loved one on the 14th of February. You can choose from 5 resilient coral species and mix and match plants if you want to adopt more than one. Coral Gardeners collects each fragment in the lagoon and grows it in its nursery. After a little more than a year, it will have matured and be ready for outplanting on the reef. Recipients are encouraged to share images of their coral bouquets on social media to spread awareness and can expect to receive regular updates about how their baby coral is getting on. Coral Gardeners is charging $25, so that's about £21 per coral plant, and says that 100% of the proceeds of each Valentine's Day coral bouquet will go to support its work. So that's a nice little money earner for them, and just something a little bit different for Valentine's Day, and yeah, you get the image that they're using to promote it is, granted, very good. It is a V-shaped piece of coral that's held in place with some twine that they're obviously using to propagate it, but. Yeah, and there's text around it and all this kind of stuff, and all of your whatever wording you want to put on. But yeah, just something a little bit different, and it's kind of cool. If you want to check them out, I'll put a link to the DiverNet article. But yeah, it's the Coral Gardeners, coralgardeners.org. In the world of freediving, CMAS, which is one of the freediving's 2 world governing bodies, has imposed fines and suspensions on Croatian freedivers Peter Klovar and Vitimar Marsic following the allegations that they arrived in the Bahamas for last July's Vertical Blue competition in possession of performance-enhancing drugs. CMAS's disciplinary committee found the 2 divers guilty of breaching its code of ethics on the grounds that the substances in their luggage were capable both of altering the outcome of the competition and of harming their own health. Each man was fined €5,000, so that's a little over £4,260, and given a 6-month suspension from competitions, dated from the 27th of November. So neither will be allowed to participate in any CMAS events again from late May this year. Vertical Blue competitors are required to sign a no-doping agreement before registration, and competition organisers were involved in the search of the freedivers' luggage when they arrived. After discovering the drugs, and despite the men's denials of guilt, Vertical Blue imposed an immediate ban on their participation at the annual depth competition, as reported on DiverNet. The divers were also suspended by CMAS pending the investigation. The competition organiser William Trubridge's freediving school also referred the matter to the disciplinary committee of freediving's other world governing body, AIDA. So they're going to be looking into it as well. However, both freedivers went on to compete at the AIDA Depth World Championship in Cyprus in September, with Klovar setting a new AIDA world record in free immersion and Marsic, a national champion, coming second in the same discipline. This led to a rift between CMAS and AIDA, with the former announcing that, quote, "we were the only ones to take immediate action over the drugs," and saying that the appearance of the freedivers in Cyprus appeared to be, quote, "far from the CMAS standards." It further announced its resolution to, quote, "discontinue further cooperation with AIDA," as reported on DiverNet in October. When announcing the penalties that CMAS was imposing on the Croatians on the 27th of February, quote, "CMAS is tirelessly committed to the fight against any form of cheating in underwater sports and will spare no effort to maintain the state of health of athletes at any level and fairness in competitions." Its, quote, "fair play" campaign is described as a move to promote clean and safe sports governance in freediving. Although not yet included in the World Anti-Doping Agency, or WADA, list of prescribed substances in all sports, use or possession, quote, in or out of competition of the drugs said to have been found on the Croatians, sildenafil, more commonly known as Viagra, and benzodiazepines, has been prohibited by CMAS in the underwater sports it governs. It says it is, quote, in the process of completing the testing procedure rules to be effective and applicable as of the upcoming 2024 international sports season. Some freedivers commented on CMAS social posts that the penalties imposed on the men seemed too lenient as to act as a deterrent to others, and that the 6-month suspension period covered mainly the winter training period, although it will include the new CMAS Freediving World Cup, which is due to be held in the Philippines in mid-May. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought when I first saw the 6-month ban, and that, yeah, it runs from, what was it, November to May, and you're like, well, okay, that's the winter period. There's not that many competitions. Granted, yeah, they do miss this Freediving World Cup in May in the Philippines, but is that enough of a deterrent? I suppose it kind of sullies their name and puts their ADA qualifications into question. So yeah, I suppose, but yeah, it's not worth doping, and it really does sort of it really sullies your name going forwards, and it puts all of your world records and all that kind of stuff into question, because, well, yeah, if you were doping at the time, does it really count? So yeah, it's not really worth it. Otherwise, as far as new dive equipment, I don't think I saw anything too new. I've been looking more into the 50th anniversary edition of the Apex MTX RC regulators. They're pretty snazzy. They've gone with the black and bronze detailing, as they did with what was it? Was their XTX 200? They brought out a black and bronze anniversary edition, but it still looks very cool. It's the Apex MTX RC, so it's cold water and all that kind of stuff. It is tough as nails. The anniversary edition has that black PVD coating on most of the metalwork, but it has bronzed effects on some of the others, so you get a nice contrast between the two. And on the front cover, the MTX RC has that metal front cover. It's got the Apex Alpha logo patterned onto it, which is pretty cool. The regulator is going to perform much the same as any other MTX RC, I imagine, but it does come with a little Apex 50 years challenge coin, which is quite nice. You've got a diver engraved onto one side of it, with celebrating 50 years of technical excellence, and on the other side you've got the Apex Alpha on the front of a Union Jack with the regulator's serial number on it, which is quite cool. It'll set you back just over £1,000. British pounds. I don't know if this is going abroad or not, but yeah, if you want a piece of history, I imagine they'll call it, then yeah, £1,056. So it's pretty spendy, but it's an Apex MTX RC. It'll last forever. It's a good, tough, cold water regulator. It's set to be available from the 5th of March, so around the Go Diving show is going to be released. But yeah, all of the images you see of it, it's pretty snazzy. They put a lot of time and effort into designing this and upgrading the looks. It's a snazzy regulator. Looking at Ask Mark questions, Davidor 876 says, I passed my DM, my dive master, in September and wanted to wait till the new year to pay my dues. I know if you don't renew your membership to PADI, you might have to redo some of your course. Will I have to redo some of my course? So you did your DM in September, and then unfortunately you have to renew in the New Year's, basically, so you've got a few months of DM. That kind of sucks, but it's just how the system works. I don't know if there is a carryover portion. Like if you do your dive master on like the last week of December, do you have to renew? I don't know. I'll have to ask Paddy. But yeah, you don't want to renew your membership until like next year. So you can't teach this year officially, I don't believe. I could be wrong. It's always worth talking to your local Paddy office. They're very easy to get in contact and just chat with about such things. Will I have to redo some of my course? I mean, if you've just done your dive master, I don't think they'll change any of the courses that much in a year. They do is it a quarterly bulletin where they send you, or at least they used to. It's been a few years since I've had my bulletins. But yeah, they send you this update document that you read through. It's got more interesting things, but any changes, any updates or whatever, they basically put it through there. There's a digital version now. It's like a webinar that you just log on to, and you can just watch, and they'll go through any updates or changes, and you basically go through that, pay your dues, and I imagine you're good to go. If it was like 3 years or more, then you'd probably need a bit more work. But it's kind of case specific. Yeah, just have a chat with your local Paddy office. If you go to paddy.com, I imagine there's a list of like contact us, and yeah, just give them a bell, and they'll help sort you out. But I don't think in this particular course, I don't believe you'll need that much retraining. I think you're pretty good to go and pretty up to date. Brent Hollett says, I'm looking to buy a John line, and I've noticed 2 camps regarding what goes on the end. Camp 1 has a simple carabiner and loops the line around the rope and clips the carabiner back onto the John line. Camp 2 uses a Garvin hook instead of on the line instead. Camp 1.5 loops a Garvin hook over the rope and clips it onto the John line, but that seems insane. What are the pros and cons of the 2 clip methods? Yeah, so if you've never heard of a Garvin hook, it's very good word use. It's named from, I've forgotten his name, but his name is Garvin, and he developed it himself. And you probably would have seen them. They're a V-shaped hook with a coil on one side, and yeah, it hooks around the anchor line or the shot line, whatever you're trying to do a stop on, and the V shape. One side is like I can't think of the word, but like gradiented. That doesn't make sense. It's got little steps in it. So depending on the size of the rope or chain or whatever you're like hooking onto, it like steps out. So it just applies a good like pinching force to it. So if you're diving in current or something and it's getting a bit crowded, or you don't want to like literally pull your shoulder out because you're just flagging on this rope as the water drags you away, you just hook that onto the line, clip it onto your BCD, and you just like hang in that place. Yeah, or the alternative is you get more of a strop, so just a piece of webbing with a loop on one side, and you hook it around. You either pass the John line back through that like hand hoop. If you imagine like, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you imagine a dog lead, pretty similar to that, and the handle, you wrap the handle around the rope and then pass the rest of the John line through that loop, and that kind of grabs onto the anchor line. You clip it off onto yourself, and that's it. So that's like your version of Camp 1. They're a bit more universal. You can use that for anything that you could use just a dog lead for in the water. You could use it to wrap around an item to create an anchor point to clip something off onto. You can, if you're lifting something, you can attach it onto that and then attach it to the lift bag. If you've got unresponsive diver, you could wrap it around their tank valve to get a bit more control of them. there's lots of things that you can use that for. Whereas with a Garvin hook, it's really good at that, attaching it onto the anchor line. But for other things, it's a little limited. It's more, it's a bit more of a specialist tool, and it takes up some space in a pocket, but not a huge amount. They're not ridiculously big, but it's those kind of things that that are going to be the pros and cons, really. Camp 1.5 is that kind of best of both worlds, where you have that multi-purpose John line, which is also named after someone, obviously called John. I forget their last name, but yeah, little known fact. And yeah, you can use it for whatever you could possibly need, and then you just attach the Garvin hook on the end of it to turn it into a really useful anchor point for when you're doing some kind of stops and you don't want to pay too much attention. So yeah, I mean, the downside to Camp 1 of just using the material is that a lot of marine lines and like anchor lines and things, they're often covered in they're quite coarse material that themselves. If they live in the ocean, they can be covered in crustaceans and whatnot, so very sharp and aggressive. So that on the line, which is often moving, is another reason to use a John line. If there's a lot of like movement on the surface, and you don't want to hold on to this anchor line that's jutting up and down, that will really pull your shoulder out of the socket. You can attach the John line, and that way you're still attached to it, but you're a bit removed, so it's less aggressive. But it is going to wear that one point where it physically attaches, so you're going to go through John lines sort of fairly more frequently. Whereas the Garvin hook is like stainless steel, so it's really strong, and it can like resist that. So yeah, they both have their pros and cons. Personally, I'm like Camp 1 in this state. I just have a blue Scuba strap, I think it was. A really nice guy came into to Simply Scuba years and years ago, and British guy, he'd come up with basically his own version, and there were two. There was a blue and a red one, and you could buy them in a pack, and yeah, it was just I suppose it's like 1 inch wide webbing with a spring clip on one side, and then a just a handle loop on the other side, and yeah, you loop it around, pass it through, and then clip it off, and you're done. It's nice and secure. It's a bit like a prusik knot in that the tighter it is, the more it holds onto where it is. But if you want to, you can move it up and down just by loosening it a little bit, and it's just really nice and simple. Stows away in a pocket, really small and compact, and just gets the job done. But I wouldn't be averse to having a proper Garvin hook neither. And as I said, that they're a bit more like robust, so it's less likely to wear through, but it does take a bit more space in your pocket. And Carl Nickelblocker 8650 says, "How is Sean doing?" Sean's doing well. He's happy. He's working, or he's like, what do you call it, like 50-50 work life, where 2 or 3 days of the week he goes into London to work, but the rest is work from home, which I couldn't stand traveling into London. One, I'm not a huge fan of trains myself personally, especially commuting on trains, but also just kind of trying to work it out. Whereas if you can just work from home, it's so much more convenient for everyone, I imagine. But yeah, he's happy. His family's all good, and yeah, he works in kind of similar to what he was doing at Simply Scuba, but it's more on the behind the scenes kind of things, moving videos and uploading them and putting in, just organizing them from how he's described it. But yeah, no, he's doing well. He's all happy. It's been a while since I've seen him. I checked up on him a few months ago, so yeah, it's probably worth a phone call. But yeah, he's all good. Otherwise, that's it for this week. Yeah, remember to head over to our website, scubadivermag.com. Check out our magazine. See if you're interested in a magazine subscription, something else that you can do for Valentine's Day instead of flowers. Buy your other half a subscription to Scuba Diver magazine, whether they're a scuba diver or not. I don't know. It would be more interesting if they are a scuba diver. Also, we have the Go Diving show coming up at the beginning of March. So yeah, if you are free, I think it's the first weekend in March. Check out godivingshow.com for information and tickets. And yeah, I'll be up there. I'll be taking videos and just sort of seeing what's new. But yeah, lots to see. All big manufacturers, lots of tourisms and all that kind of stuff. The training agencies are always there. So yeah, check it out. Otherwise, thank you for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.